In the 17th century, there were Christian missionaries in Japan who, when captured, would be forced to step on pictures of Jesus as a way to identify and persecute Christians. Those who refused to step on the images gave themselves away as followers of a forbidden religion in that land, and they were punished accordingly. But many went on and still kept doing their ministry, despite these circumstances. Violent Christian persecution does still exist today, but for us, our challenges in following God will often look different depending on the culture we live in, but are still present nonetheless. What does it mean for you to want to follow God? On paper or over text or even saying it out loud, I want to follow God, might be really easy. Some know Jesus as one who said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light," and believe that that applies to all of their life circumstances. Some believe this applies from the moment of their first confession of faith and onward. Would you be willing to consider that following God is easier said than done? Are you frustrated that you thought by now, after running into so many devastating situations, that they would just get less frequent? For many of us, after all we've been through, I'd be willing to guess that sometimes the feeling still creeps in. Following God is harder than I thought. And is my loyalty to Him even worth it? Among the many Old Testament stories of faithfulness to God, Ruth stands out in many relatable ways. She's an outsider to Israel due to her Moabite heritage. She marries into an Israelite family that accepts her as one of their own. But however, within the first 5 verses of Ruth chapter 1, she and her sister Orpah are married. Then 10 years pass, and they both lose their husbands and their father-in-law. And now their mother-in-law wants to return home to Judah, leaving Ruth and her sister to remain in Moab without her. Ruth is now up against Naomi, someone who she loves, someone who she knows wants the best for her, but is encouraging her to go home. How is Ruth relatable? She knows she's an outsider. She has lost multiple loved ones, including her own husband. And now the last member of her family wants to leave her and her sister behind. Naomi makes 4 attempts to get her daughters-in-law to return home, but take note of Ruth's perseverance, her loyalty. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. When it comes from the most well-meaning people in our lives, the temptation to turn away from God can be often felt at its worst. In verses 14 and 15, even Ruth's sister gives up and returns home. Gary W. Phillips notes that Orpah may have desired to just be a wife again, more so than her initial desire to be a part of Naomi's people with Ruth. Whether her expectations were different or not, she was convinced to return home and to go back to her gods. Even an Israelite like Naomi encouraged someone else to follow a different God other than the one she follows. But Ruth, she remained faithful and loyal to Naomi. But to what end? Even death. Even if the God of Naomi himself were to deal with her severely, she would rather risk the wrath of the Almighty God and follow him than return to her old homeland and follow her old gods. And I'll be honest, I doubt Ruth sounded anywhere near as upbeat as Chris Tomlin does in his song, "I Will Follow." Probably quite the opposite. What does this mean for us? I think even Orpah at one point or another wanted or even felt like she should follow Naomi and by association, Naomi's God. But instead, after well-meaning pressure, she returned home. Ruth, however, had a loyalty with no strings attached. She had a faith that was rooted in the acceptance of death. And she believed it was worth it to follow Naomi anyways. When we find ourselves in similar circumstances to Ruth, and we inevitably will, whether that's a job change that forces you to move, the death of a loved one, or simply when it's just more convenient to not follow God, how should we respond? Do we listen to a well-intentioned Naomi? Or should we model our decisions after a faithful Ruth? She did not know if she would marry again, and it is clear she was content with that. However, she later meets a husband worth waiting for. Ruth's loyalty to Naomi led her to faithfully follow her God, who rewarded her abundantly, more than she could have imagined. For us, the answer may not always be easy, but it is clear. We should pattern the way we follow after God, after Ruth's loyalty to Naomi. Thank you.